Great. Oh, wow. We are so happy. What an incredible day to have Brian Portnoy here. And so we are starting to welcome in all of our attendees. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited. We can't believe the date is finally here. As you know, great. We see a lot of familiar faces. Again, how exciting that you've joined us and how opportune too. Of all the days here, Brian, I'm really excited that we picked this date, especially for you.
Wednesday,
June 14th. And we selected this ages ago.
we did.
Yes. We have our Intentionally in Friends book club is the second Wednesday of every month. We do this once a month. And this is our third and biggest book club meeting to date. We're really excited.
Yay.
Yeah. So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Oh, I see John O'Connell, who was our guest for our second book club meeting, Rise of the Activist Investor. You're going to love today's conversation. Great. A lot of fantastic names. Tell everybody would love to know, where are you from? Where are you coming in from today, everyone? Let us know in the chat. Good. Where are we from today? Brian, how's the weather near you? I know where you are today.
I'm in sunny Chicago. I'm looking out my window. It is sunny and cloudy down in the north side of Chicago.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, here, Lauren and I are at Intentionally Studios in King of Prussia. Weather's kind of overcast, but it allowed me a power walk right before today's book club. Oh, we've got smoke-filled Minnesota. Dick is smoke-filled Minnesota.
It's my friend, Dick Edstrom.
Okay. And we've got Mary in Minneapolis. Hi, Mary. Keena in Florida. Hello, Keena. Thank you for your question on LinkedIn today. Matt's in Bend and John's in rainy New Jersey. Don't we get it? Don't we get it? So I'm so excited too for one of our first poll questions about you, Brian. We hope to trick everybody on this one. It's not a financial question. It's just some awesome things about you. So welcoming, we'll give it a few more minutes. Also got some props that you've never seen before, Brian.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yes, absolutely. But I have to tell you, it's really hard, even in an Amazon world, to find a circle in red, a triangle in green, and a square in teal. So I'm excited to show you what I have. Yep, blue, but you know us marketers, creatives.
I'll find one of my beat up copies.
Oh boy. And before I get to housekeeping, hey, everybody who asked a question in the chat and the question panel today, you could be entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card and a free copy of The Geometry of Wealth. So yeah, so really excited. Okay. As people are coming in the door here, the virtual door, let me start. And I just want to give a big shout out to everyone that's here. Thank you so much for attending and joining the Intentionally and Friends book club, coming to you live from Intentionally Studios in kind of overcast King of Prussia, Pennsylvania today. Our special guest, Brian Portnoy, author of The Geometry of Wealth, How to Shape a Life of Money and Meaning, available on Amazon, all major book outlets, and Audible, as well as all of his other books. So before I introduce Brian, we have to just announce a few housekeeping items. My name is Tina Powell. I'm partner and chief growth officer here at Intentionally. I'm joined in person by my partners, Kelly Waltrick and Megan Richter, co-founders of Intentionally, and my colleague, technical assistant here, Lauren Higgins. And a big shout out to Kelly Waltrick, our CEO, who actually brainchilded this entire book club series. I know a lot of you have put some great things in social media saying how this is a good idea. Wish I could take credit for it, but I am so honored to be here with Brian and to be with all of you. So if you're having any comments, if you have any technical issues, please let us know in the chat and we'll get to you as soon as possible. And if you're looking for information on our book club series, you can just go to intention.ly to find it. This book club is being recorded. You all know that. It is made, the replay will be made to all of the participants. Last, if you're an author, know of one, and would like to recommend one, send it to us at bookclub@growintentionally.com. And lastly, we appreciate the courteousness of your time and attention today. Understand this program is educational in nature and not offering any financial specific advice. So please consult with your financial advisor or registered financial professional as it relates to your own investment portfolio. So with that, Brian Portnoy, welcome. Everyone meet Brian, give a big shout out. We're big on emojis here too, and reactions here in Zoom. So we'd love to have those. Brian Portnoy, Ph.D., CFA, well-known expert in the psychology of money. He is founder of Shaping Wealth, a coaching and content platform inspiring financial well-being globally. Brian's multiple best-selling books have been published in 9 languages. One of them, The Geometry of Wealth, is the book we'll be discussing today. And it inspired his current venture. Published in 2018 by Harriman House, available on Amazon and Audible as well. I consider this an evergreen book as part of every investor's and financial advisor's library. Brian grew up as an industry expert in research complex investments. He worked nearly 20 years in a hedge fund and mutual fund industry as an investor, researcher, and educator. It was during that stretch of time that he developed his passion for simplifying the complex and making true wealth understandable and achievable for people like me. Brian serves as the Ambassador's Council of the Alliance for Decision Education. He is a CFA charter holder. He earned his doctorate at the University of Chicago. And most importantly, Brian lives in Chicago with his wife, 3 kids, and dog named Freddie. Brian Portnoy, welcome.
Tina, this is keep going. This
I
keeps
know,
getting
we get
better.
that reaction. We get that reaction from a lot of people.
Yeah, so much of happiness in life is avoiding future regret. And my only regret right now is that Freddie is not on my lap waving hi to everybody, because that's where he usually is.
Well, we've got a fun fact around you, Brian. Again, you have a tremendous following. Oh my goodness. And we've got some really smart, intelligent attendees here. So fun fact about Brian, it's the poll we've got first. Brian's favorite NFL team. You guys, you guessed it right. I'm going to end the poll here. Allow 1 more minute. Suspense is mounting. Chicago Bears, Pittsburgh Steelers, Philadelphia Eagles. Brian, what is it?
It's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Woo! Wow.
I'd like to know who from intentionally voted for the Eagles. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah. So we've got 5 for Eagles. We've got 9 for Bears. You know, we had to show some Eagle loves. They got pretty close last year. Okay. But really, congratulations of the book. It's no secret that I'm a huge fan. What sparked you to write The Geometry of Wealth? Let's start there.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. So, and first of all, Tina, all my friends at Intentionally, thank you. This is just a list of attendees. Like, I know many of these people. I love many of these people. This is kind of already fantastic. So what motivated me to write The Geometry of Wealth was probably something resembling my second midlife crisis. My first one led to the investor's paradox, me asking, what the hell was I doing with my career? And I wrote a book, a traditional book in behavioral finance. The second book, The Geometry of Wealth, reflected 2 different things, one professional, one personal. On the professional front, I had sort of begun to build a career in applied behavioral finance, behavioral coaching, and I was traveling the country for years, meeting thousands of financial advisors and talking to not only them, but their clients. and recognizing that I was hearing two questions over and over again from literally thousands of people. Am I going to be okay? And how much is enough? Note that neither of those has anything to do with the stock market or what the Fed does on any particular day, or the level of inflation, or whether you're choosing a great large cap growth fund. Am I going to be okay? Are my loved ones going to be okay? And how much is enough? And so you hear things over and over again, and you see patterns. For me, it's, thinking, writing, that's was sort of the impetus for the Geometry of Wealth. The second thing on the personal front, because whatever, 7 years ago, Ben, Zach, and Sarah were 7 years younger. And I was thinking about, them and what we could be doing to raise them right. And, maybe I had something to say on a few things, including where money was going to fit into a good life for them. So the book is devoted or dedicated to them. And it's sort of my voice as their dad to help answer the question, where does money fit into a meaningful life? So, I created a couple concepts, sort of put together some pieces, some shapes that we're going to talk to in some detail. And hopefully when the time is right, they read it and it makes a difference in their life.
I really like that. I talk about how the timing of this interview is fortuitous, not only with the FOMC meeting today, but it's Father's Day weekend. It's Father's
coming
Day
up.
weekend. So
Yeah.
a happy early Father's Day to
Thanks.
you, Brian.
Thanks, Tina.
And I love that story. I think throughout the book, you've really weaved your own personal narrative as well as your professional narrative. Again, you kept it very real for me. And it was I think the book has more meaning in my life now more than ever
Yeah.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But here's another thing that I loved, and how you inscribed my copy. And yes, I was very lucky to get a copy of Brian's book many moons ago. So it says, to Tina, wishing you a life of funded contentment. And I didn't understand initially what you meant by funded contentment when you put that in my book until I actually read the book. So, I mean, for some of our attendees today and guests, and again, we appreciate you all for being here. It's the main premise. It's the DNA. It's the heartstring of the book. So tell everyone what you mean by funded contentment.
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah. So my insignias come with a test. You don't know what they mean unless you actually read the book. I don't know if that makes me cruel or what. Yeah. So the core idea that I develop in the book is funded contentment, which is my verbiage for true wealth. It's either on page 1 or page 2. I don't remember, where I make a big distinction between being rich and being wealthy. And being rich is a number. Being rich involves a search for more. And there are elements of that journey that are enjoyable, but ultimately the quest for more is unsatisfying. I went in a different direction, the other fork in the road, and said, well, what does it mean to be truly wealthy? Where does money fit into a meaningful life? My definition of funded contentment or true wealth is that it is the ability to underwrite a life that is meaningful to you. And there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, it's a simple statement. But what do we mean by funded? What do we mean by contentment? What do we mean by a meaningful life? And what I do throughout the book is sort of unpack that idea, but then chart the path to get there. What I realized only in retrospect was that, my early work in the industry, my early writing in the industry was actually about the quest for more, choosing better investments, being in the right part of the market, establishing the right asset allocation, all that kind of stuff. That was a search to be rich. It was a search for more, but it wasn't scratching the real itch, which I tried to do in this book, which is basically to say, okay, what does the good life look for you? What does the good life look, to you, which is a very individual thing, and it's also something that changes through our lives. We go through ups and downs, Tina, as you know, right? Seriously.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, right. And I feel like the funded contentment idea gives us some leverage. It gives us a little power to interrogate the good life, but then ask the hard and maybe even awkward question, can I afford it?
Mm-hmm.
Can I underwrite that life? And so what I encourage people to do with that term is to focus on the contentment piece first, to ask themselves, well, what does it mean to have a good life? What does it mean to achieve contentment, deep contentment, not day-to-day good mood or happiness? And then once you've defined that, well, then let's go on to the next question of fundedness, or how do I underwrite those sources of contentment for me?
I can just imagine an advisor sitting across from their client right now. We've got a lot of advisors right now on the on the club, in the club right now. And
Mhm.
I can imagine if they're sitting across the table and asking that prospective client, or even a client that they've already had, you know what? Hey, you know what, Jean and Sam, what does we're going to get into all the financials today, but what does a life meaningful to you really, really look like? And I think that's such a power question, Brian. I think it's brilliant. And we're going to talk a little bit about your framework, because that's actually what starts to guide that conversation. This was my big reveal moment today.
Mm.
Um, I
Oh,
wanted
there
to
we
get
go.
this a circle, but you've created a framework to get us with steps that map to that funded contentment. And then I think, you kept me throughout the book, Brian, you kept me in the lane. The first is the circle, which is the adapt, and
Mm.
really within the book, really prompting us to understand, what does our purpose look like? And I can tell you honestly, my purpose is different today than it even was like 2 years ago. So the next shape is triangle and the next is a square. I'm not going to give it away to you, but kind of talk about what was the genesis of the shape. It's one thing to come up with a concept, but then you have the shapes that map, hence the geometry of wealth. Everybody, aren't you seeing it?
Yeah. How about that? It clicks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
So let me say a few framing things, and then let's dive into the shapes,
Yeah.
because they are the story, um, or at least they are the path. So first off, the brain processes images 60,000 times faster than words. And so we are very much image-driven creatures. The only thing worse than words are numbers. And our industry is obsessed with numbers. We were not born as calculators. We were born as storytellers. And we love images that tell our stories. And so one thing I wanted to do, because it's always been a passion of mine to simplify, to really cut through the BS. I mean, I spent more than 10 years in the hedge fund industry, so I saw a lot of complexity. And I think I wasn't terrible at taking a lot of these complex investments and just cutting to the chase. And so I wanted to create a simple framework for how to achieve funded contentment. So that's the premise behind why shapes at all. I mean, it maybe seems a little juvenile or sophomoric, but it's very deliberately chosen in terms of the way we engage with images. Well, what do the shapes represent? Well, let me summarize those very quickly. Purpose, priorities, decisions. Setting your purpose or defining your purpose, and then on the back of that, setting your priorities, and in the context of priorities, making decisions. And why those particular shapes? The shapes are meaningful. It's a circle because it's a round world. We're always figuring it out. What defines what's important to me, purpose and meaning at age 54 is different than at age 44, 34, and so forth. Tina, thank God you are getting through a life-changing event. And we've talked offline. You are thinking about the world differently. My friend Lisa Allen is in the chat. She's thinking about how her purpose is changing through life. And what I want, and we're going to dive into the 4 sources of contentment, the 4 C's, because that's like super important. That's like the rock.
Yeah, it's so wild because I have that. That's a major bookmark here. So Lisa, thank you
Yeah,
for
I have a
that.
bookmark too. How about that?
Yeah,
Well, we're going to come to it.
unbelievable.
Let me.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'll get through the shape. The shape. So the first thing we want to do is think about purpose, recognizing that it's going to be ephemeral, but at any moment in time that we need to define it. And I'm inspired, motivated, as are my co-founders at Shaping Wealth, by Brene Brown. And how do we bring language to emotion? Because if you can't name something, it's hard to deal with. If you go to the doctor with physical pain, and you can't say it's up here or down there, you can't say whether it's dull or sharp, well, then you can't get help. You can't solve the problem. So I'm just really passionate about putting sharp and precise words to the things that really matter. So in the context of purpose, it's a circle because we're going around and around. Why is the priorities section a triangle? It's because, to me, there are three priorities related to the balance between risk and reward. We have what I call the evolutionary two-step that we're constantly going through. We survive and thrive, we survive and thrive. And so the triangle, in terms of setting priorities, is that we protect, we balance, and then we reach. And so for those on the call who are old like me, you'll remember Casey Kasem saying that you keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. That's basically the triangle. Job number one is risk management. Job two is just homeostasis, equilibrium, just sort of staying in balance most of the time. Ecstasy and depression are not happy places. They're unstable. We're somewhere in the middle. We're wired that way. And then the third part of the triangle, to thrive or to flourish or to reach, well, once you're grounded and protected and safe, you can go there. Lastly, quickly, the square represents the decisions we make. The book has a little bit of a wonky framework for making investment decisions. I've actually amended my perspective since I published the book in 2018. Now I think across different dimensions of money life, not just investing, but saving, spending, borrowing, giving, and so forth. The point is that there are simplified frameworks that we can use to make sharper decisions. It's an iterative process. And I always want to emphasize that true wealth stems from a calibration between purpose and planning. A calibration between purpose and planning. So, I think somewhere toward the beginning, I say that we want both clean minds and dirty hands, but you can't have just one or the other. So we're not just philosophers sitting around thinking about the good life, but we can also get too wrapped up in the weeds. The question is, how can you do the back and forth between the big picture, philosophical, timeless stuff, as you've put it, and the timely risk management and decisions that we all need to make on a daily basis? Circle, triangle, square, purpose, priorities, decisions. That's the simplest three-step path toward funded contentment.
And we're getting some great feedback. Thank you, Helen. The three shapes make a lot of sense. And I would say towards the end of the book too, the way that the book is structured, which again is really helpful in that you not only have the main chapters, but then you have a summary at the end. So you always know like what shape you're in, because you can easily reference to that. I don't want to skip over a major term, and again, philosophy in the book. You just introduced it and casually dropped it, and that is a term that you use called money life. Money life.
Yeah.
Talk about money life. Again, you kind of went through it, but I just want to make a clear fork in the road here of what you mean by money life. It's mentioned throughout the book.
Let's plant that flag. So, and let's step back and give a little bit of context. So, this gray matter between our ears is about, in its current form, is about 130,000 years old. I mean, the brain's been around for millions of years, but the one that we have now is pretty similar to 100 millennia ago. So it's a pretty old piece of hardware. Money, the first coin, was discovered in the ancient kingdom of Lydia, what is now Turkey. And the Lydian coin is 2,600 years old. Our brains are 130,000 years old. Money is 3,000 years old. There's a mismatch between this old hardware and this new software that we're still coming to terms with. So we might take all these things for granted in terms of what is money. And remember in 7th grade, Tina, unit of exchange, or means of exchange, unit of account, snooze, Snorville, right? It doesn't tell you anything. Money, in fact, triggers our deepest emotional reactions: anger, fear, greed, envy, hope, joy, you name it. How we get along, how we form trusting relationships, and so forth. So when I talk about money life, I talk about the different dimensions or different types of practices that we engage in that are all relatively new through this new thing called money. In my view, there are 7 dimensions of money life: earning, saving, spending, borrowing, giving, investing, and I'm forgetting one because I'm on the hot seat right now. But so that's 6 of the 7. It'll come to me. The point is that we are navigating.
Protecting. Thank you, James.
What's
Jim.
that?
Sorry, protecting, Jim.
Jim.
Yes,
Jim,
thank
one
you,
of the
Jim.
one of the great alumni of Shaping Wealth's advanced coaching program. So Jim,
Shout out to you, Jim.
Shout out to Jim. So we are engaging in all of these different types of activities. And just as a little footnote, the neurotransmitters that fire in our brain, the chemicals that slosh around inside our noggin, are different depending on which dimensions of money life we are engaging in. So when we're spending versus giving versus protecting, our brains are firing differently. That's too deep for today and not really relevant to the book. But the point is that money life's really complicated. And back to that big mismatch, 100,000 years ago versus 3,000 years ago, our brains were not wired to make great financial decisions. So the fact that we want to sell when markets crater, that we hesitate to buy, insurance, we spend too much, we don't abide by our budgets. We all have to show each other or ourselves grace because this stuff's really hard. We weren't wired to make great decisions.
Wow, I can't wait to get the transcript for that. There are so many like tweetable and so many great nuggets. I would say that the book does a really good job at making me feel that being human and all of my emotions are okay. I also think that you just saying like, hey, coming from a PhD and a CFA, that this stuff is really hard. You also too, on page 23, you also talk about a summary of all of our predicaments, and you basically lay out a state of affairs that's not so warm and fuzzy, I'll call it, right?
Yeah.
So like, for example, everyone, we have more responsibility than in our financial lives than ever before. We're uncomfortable talking about and learning about money. We're considerably living longer and prolonging problems. Our brains are hardwired to make lousy decisions. People are financially fragile. Our earnings and savings are potentially less than it was. So these modern themes about what modern life looks like, and contextualized around what like the human brain and all of our behaviors are doing, that was good. That gave me permission to feel the way that I do. And I'm sure that a lot of advisors working with their clients could benefit again from having deeper, more emotional decisions and discussions around money rather than it being just like so transactional.
Yeah. And that is the big trend in our industry, from being more transactional to being more relationship oriented, to solving engineering problems, to solving life guidance problems. I would really like to emphasize the word that you just used and add another word. I'll sort of up the ante, right? We're playing a little poker here. You use permission. I'm gonna take that one, and then I'm gonna add in another word: validation. One thing I've realized that is just so powerful, not only at the level of the individual investor or client of a financial advisor, but the advisor herself, is the dual dynamic of permission and validation. Because of this mismatch, because some of these money challenges are so difficult to process, and footnote, reliable source, American Psychological Association, every single year they do a survey on stress in America. Every single year, money is the most stressful topic. It's the thing that people want to talk about least relative to the other big things: marriage, sex, religion, politics, you name it. People want to talk about that before they want to talk about money. Do you really know what your best friend makes for a living? Do you know what his or her balance sheet looks like? Do you talk about these things? No. I bet you know about their health issues. I bet you know about their relationship issues. I bet you know nothing about their money. And so it's a really, really hard topic. And so just the act of giving someone permission to say, hey, we can go there. Ooh, body language changes, people exhale, their heart rate changes, they begin to breathe a little bit easier. So giving that permission is so incredibly powerful. I've also seen on the permission front, not just from the clients, but from advisors per se, that they kind of want to talk about these issues, but because of their own training or their own attitudes or because of their compliance department, they're compelled to show up with these ridiculous binders of information that no one wants to read or talk about, but that's what they read and talk about. We have permission to talk about the real things going on, about everyone's endless search for funded contentment. And then the second word quickly is validation. You're not alone. Okay. Everybody is going through this. Everybody is thinking about these issues. Everybody is concerned and goes through the whole technicolor cycle of emotions as it relates to money on a very frequent basis. So that dynamic of permission and validation, if you just keep that in mind, whether you're on the call and you're just an individual investor or reader and someone passionate about this topic, or if you're an advisor who's guiding other clients, that permission and validation dynamic should be the front set of tools in your toolkit to structure every single conversation. Because what it does, especially from an advisor to a client, is allows the client to be seen and heard and understood. And forget the fact that you have a higher Sharpe ratio or you outperform the market by 27 basis points. I mean, really, who gives a damn anyway? That client's going to walk out of the meeting and say, I feel heard. I feel seen for the first time. I was able to talk about stuff that was really hard for me. And she created a space, or he created a space where I'm allowed to talk about these things. It's not only good work, it's not only virtuous work, it's also good business.
And it's the reason why clients stick. Like, at the end of the day, isn't that an advisor's value add? Isn't it all about the relationship?
I think so. Yeah. And look, I mean, we work, that's all I do. I work with advisors. It's mostly what I've been doing for going on 10 straight years now. And yeah, I mean, 99% of advisors I've met seem to care deeply about the clients that they work with. But that's not to say that you don't need to continue to invest in the skills and attitudes to do better, to train your team, to grow your firm, and to make a bigger impact on society.
This is great stuff, Brian. You're introducing us to a lot of concepts today, including one that you have for now getting past the complexity in our minds. You talk about the two-speed brain. But you also introduce us to a concept called adaptive simplicity. So while all of this stuff might be overwhelming, and while certain chemicals and cocktails might be shooting off in our brain, you do in the book now have a pattern and a flow to take us from one point into another point. You want to describe a little bit about what that adaptive simplicity is from the Ph.D. CFA who has helped to make life simpler for us?
Yeah. So adaptive simplicity is sort of the low humming engine in the background of this whole book. And it's sort of a projection of some of what I value, which is basically roll with the punches and keep it simple along the way. So this idea of adaptive simplicity is the idea that the world is predictably unpredictable, that stuff happens. We know unpredictable things are going to happen, but almost by definition, we don't know what they're going to be and when they're going to happen. But we can think ahead a little bit in terms of how can we be prepared for those things. And at the same time, the world is complex. I could argue that it's never been more complex. We have more information, more data, more choice than at any point before in recorded human history. There's something in social psychology, an idea known as the paradox of choice. It basically says that choice is a good thing because it allows us to feel like we have control over our environment. But when we're given too much choice, it's self-defeating and we become frustrated and even sad and depressed. And so if you walk down an aisle in Costco or Walmart or a place like that, or you just go online to shop, and you do a search for garden gnomes and you come up with like 7,000 choices, it can be very, very overwhelming. I'll make reference to my second old commercial today, Calgon, take me away. Tina, you and I get that, half the call.
I get that. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Give us a big shout out in the chat and give us some emojis if you can react to that too.
Yeah, I'll keep going with dated cultural references. It's one of my
love it. I'm so with you there. We're so like, yeah, I got
totally.
you.
Totally. Yeah, John O'Connell, thumbs up on Calgon, take me away. So with adaptive simplicity, I'll just leave it at this, that the world is hard, the world is unpredictable, and the key to success, to flourishing and thriving is to be able to adapt. When you get punched in the face, how do you respond? And along the way, a big part of that dynamic is to take all of the noise that's coming with us and try to find the signal in the noise. If you can embrace, roll with the punches and keep it simple, you're going to be able to motor yourself through purpose, priorities, decisions, and circle, triangle, square.
Thank you for that. And I want to remind everyone to please put your questions in the questions panel. I do have that question from LinkedIn already queued up, but I want to kind of go back to the portion of the book that Lisa Allen had referenced. And that is, going into chapter 4 and now kind of taking us through that journey of adaptive simplicity. We start out with purpose of thinking about what are our values, what really matters in life. And I love because the overarching question in money has been like, does money really truly buy happiness? And you present you present a lot of historical references to that, but you also talk about His Holiness Dalai Lama and now Archbishop Desmond Tutu's meeting, which actually you could find on video. Like you could still find this stuff, which is the great thing about the internet. And there's a fundamental difference between happiness and joy. And again, you weave these kind of concepts throughout the book because what are clients looking for? We all think that money is the silver bullet, or we've been led to believe that our happiness is somehow correlated to the amount of money. And we're going to talk about a study on that. Kind of let's explore the difference between happiness and joy. It was a poignant part in the book for me personally.
Yeah. And when I came across that book and that video, it was meaningful to me as well, Tina. So one of the hardest things that we have to do is to define happiness. It's one of these words that's out there. There's a long, fascinating cultural history of what is happiness. So what I want to do is connect ancient Greece and modern Philadelphia. I want to start with Aristotle. And in the Nicomachean Ethics, he used the word eudaimonia. And he was in sort of an ongoing debate with different sects within ancient Greek culture who were, reflecting on the good life. At least for themselves. Their slaves were not necessarily leading good lives, right? So the argument back then basically was, and this is like crazy simplification, but you had Aristotle talking about this idea of eudaimonia, which is not sort of the day-to-day yellow smiley face, good mood, happiness. It's a deeper sense of meaning or purpose, truly the good life, capital G, capital L, good life. There are other groups like the hedonists and the Epicureans who believed in something that was more sort of ephemeral, or things that just came and went. The hedonists believed that happiness was maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. It ends up from a brain science point of view that they're both right. You talked about the dual track brain, or you made quick reference to it. The fact is that we think of ourselves as deeply thoughtful, reflective creatures. The fact is 99-point-something% of our brain activity is completely subconscious. Most of what's going on in our noggins, we have no idea. And so we've got neurotransmitters firing, and we feel good or bad about a particular situation. And when we switch into so-called system 2 mode, and we're deeply reflecting, when we feel like that whole human, well, we begin to ask ourselves, am I leading a good life? Is this what I had hoped for? So I'm going to connect all of that to Philadelphia. I know you said King of Prussia. It's fancy, right? You're in Philadelphia, according to me. So University of Pennsylvania, social scientist, psychologist named Marty Seligman, about 30 years ago, invented the science of happiness, what's become known as positive psychology. And it's become a very important and pronounced field in the broader discipline of psychology. And he was able to add some science behind Aristotle's sort of general philosophical musings. And where that literature is now, where the understanding now is that there's sort of this spectrum of what I call, and what a lot of social scientists call, experienced versus reflective happiness. Experienced is in the moment. It's like, hey, how do you feel right now? You happy, you sad, is what it is. Reflective happiness is what I call the step back. You step back and say, how's it going? Am I happy? Do I feel content? Am I living a meaningful life? Am I fulfilling or my values? Am I living up to my beliefs and my values? That is a very conscious thing. And it's also a very tiring thing. We're not spending most of our time going through those sorts of ruminations. The type of happiness that I'm talking about in the book is Aristotle's eudaimonia, the modern social scientists' reflective happiness. when I talk about funded contentment being the ability to underwrite a life that's meaningful to you, that meaningful life is what's attached to that eudaimonia or to the reflective happiness. That's a really important fork in the road that allows us to talk, and Lisa made reference to it in the chat, the 4 sources of contentment, which we should talk about, answers to the question of whether money buys happiness. But until you kind of sort out what you mean by happiness, and there's literally tens of thousands of articles written on this topic, tens of thousands of research studies over the last generation on money and happiness. Most of that literature hinges on what definition of happiness you're using. Most of those articles you get through the econometric analysis and all that noise, it boils down to a semantic issue. What type of happiness are you talking about?
Can we talk really quickly before we get to the 4 C's? Because I think I definitely want to spend some time there. Couple of things. Would love to launch the poll. Would love for you just to talk a few minutes on the Kahneman and Deaton study. We do have a poll for our audience.
Okay.
And that is the second poll. And so I'm going to launch that right now. So in 2010, Dr. Kahneman and we have a misspelling. That should be Deaton, found that money could only boost happiness up to a certain point. It was a certain dollar value. Again, we've got a really smart group of people here. So you want to just spend a little bit of time. What do you make of that study? What's the takeaway from us? Again, you're a researcher, you're a PhD. What is the average person supposed to make of that study?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to give the answer away. About a third of the people on this call are students of mine, so there better be some right answers. So I won't give the answer until you reveal the answer, and I'll say what's right, and then put a big asterisk and footnote to it.
Okay.
That,
I can ask you a quick question too, Brian. So this comes from Lisa Allen. So in your book, and you actually, I think, do mention it in your book, that you say that you probably won't write any more books about money. Wondering if you still feel that way. Lisa loves this book and she wants more.
Well, Lisa's very kind. Lisa's a friend in real life, IRL, as the kids say. And yeah, I think that's still the case. I think I have some bigger fish to fry. I think the next book is going to jump off from chapter 10 on the topic of enough and some of the sort of deep underlying tensions that we all existentially experience. So there will be some financial implications, but notwithstanding the fact that I'm running a company that does financial coaching, I think I'm done writing books about the topic. I'm not going to stop teaching and coaching on all this stuff. So, but thanks, Lisa. She's earned herself a signed copy of whenever that book comes out in like 2028, right?
Well, you might have to give one to Jason Pereira, because here's what he said. So fintech expert, podcaster, he's partner and financial planner at Woodgate Financial. He's president of the FPA in Canada. Here's what he said, which is his favorite line from this book. And this is, I quote, "If you're making investments outside a well-articulated plan, meaning that some or all investments are not explicitly matched to defined objectives, then you're speculating, not investing." Boom.
Yeah. Yeah. Jason Pereira in the house.
Yeah. So big shout out to Jason too. So let's go back to those 4 C's. Was that mind blowing? Like when you were creating this book, did you already have that framework, or did it like come to you as you were writing that chapter?
All right. So we're talking 4 C's. Is that
we're talking 4 C's. And for everybody here, this is, let me just show you what the 4 touchstones. There's even like a chart. This is brilliant. I was like, wow, was this Brian's aha moment? Did you and Tracy, you go to Tracy and did like Tracy and the kids and Freddie go, what's going on in there? Like,
yeah, no, if you could hear eye rolls from my house as I'm, well, I don't even want to get into it. So
that's page 64, all of you.
Well, it's chapter 4 walks through all of this, and I would say chapter 4 and chapter 10 might be the most important chapters in the book. And by the way, let's put a pin in the Kahneman and Deaton study, because I didn't answer your question. I don't know.
I'm sorry. You're right.
It's cool, but it's best to talk about that after the 4 C's, because once we understand that, then the Deaton, the Kahneman and Deaton study will make more sense. It's a landmark it's a landmark study. So it's worth unpacking that a little bit. So, if the whole point of this exercise, so I started thinking about the book in 2014, 2015, ultimately published it in 2018. I mean, these things take years to marinate and gestate and matriculate and lots of verbs. And a big part of it was just thinking about this question, how to shape a life of money and meaning. Where does money fit into a meaningful life? Well, what the hell is a meaningful life? Well, the good thing is I think I didn't rely on the financial literature or the economic literature. I just relied on the fact that I'd been living in the world at that point, for whatever, 47, 48, 50 years old or something. And basically through some combination of philosophy, history, theology, literature, psychology, economics, neuroscience, and so forth. This is the stuff of late night bars sessions with your friends, just drinking whiskey or beer, just talking about shit, right? Like what's it all about? And there's an old line from a long gone social scientist named George Box. And he said, I think it was in the 1950s, that all models are wrong, but some are useful. And so what I do all the time, I'm sort of obsessed with this idea of mental models or frameworks, basically ways to simplify a very complex world. I came up with a 4-part framework. There are many, if you Google or go to ChatGPT and say, hey, give me a framework for understanding a life well lived, you're going to come up with 900 different frameworks. This is the one that I came up with, the 4 C's: connection, control, competence, and context. Connection is our relationships with others. It's that deep sense of belonging. Control is that deep sense of autonomy, freedom, liberty, the having goals, being motivated to pursue those goals. Competence or mastery is sort of being good or having a passion for a vocation or a hobby or a craft, or just indulging in your creativity. And then the 4th C, context, is a broader sense of purpose, that you're connected to something beyond yourself. And over the millennia and across cultures, those tend to be 2 things: faith and place. We are very much driven by our religious beliefs, and if not religious per se, our spirituality, some sense of a narrative connection to the way the world works, where we fit into the cosmos. And then place is your patriotism, your hometown pride, that attachment. I mean, I left Pittsburgh in 1987. I still talk endlessly about Pittsburgh. It's meaningful to me, right?
And you're still a Steelers fan.
Oh,
And
good
your
Lord.
family is too.
Oh, big time. Black and Freddie's got a black and gold little outfit. He's a 7-pound dog with like a 3-pound sweater that he wears on Sundays. The 4 C's: connection, control, competence, and context. I could say belonging, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, but instead of BAMP, I went with 4 C's. I felt like it was a little bit more memorable. And each of those is a very, I think, well-trodden, in the best sense, a path toward thinking about life well lived. I mean, if there's questions on any of those, I'm happy to indulge. I just gave a talk to a group of like normal people, meaning not advisors, yesterday. And it was fabulous because it puts words to what people are trying to articulate to themselves and their partners, let alone their financial advisors. But when we think about a life well lived, before we even get to money has nothing to do with this yet. It's just like, well, where are we getting grounded in eudaimonia? Where are we getting grounded? It is from our attachment to others, small t, tribal affiliations. It is from that sense that we can do what we want in this world, that we have control, that we can achieve our goals, that we're really good at something, that we can even find flow. That's that moment where 3 hours have gone by and you don't know where they went because you're so into working or playing guitar or doing whatever it is you're passionate about. And then, having that broader sense of purpose or context, your belief in God, your belief in the earth or nature, your hometown pride, whatever it is. one thing that we do in our coaching programs at Shaping Wealth is have advisors, and in turn, hopefully their clients, walk through their personal history of the 4 C's, because you've said it, Tina, you've been on a really special journey lately. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with my life. I'll leave it at that. Lisa's made a couple comments in the chat. And I know, offline, Lisa's very thoughtful about these things. Like we're all figuring this shit out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have a capable set of categories. All models are wrong, but some are useful. Hopefully people find this particular model of the good life useful in thinking through where they've been, where they are, and where they're going, who they've been, who they might be in the future.
I find what you just said, and I find those types of conversations so inspirational. I know that Kelly, Megan, and I have had those types of conversations here at Intentionally. It's really about like understanding, what you're doing and why you're doing it and what brings you joy, and I love how you just described like time just stands still. We could all like literally be here until like 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. It's like, where did the time go? Like you just get lost. There is a question around the 4 C's from Matt. Thank you. So his question is this: Brian, what are your thoughts about how effective employing the 4 C's or any of these ideas are for helping traditionally black and white thinkers, those less likely to have a roll with the punches outlook?
Yeah, so I appreciate that, Matt. And the roll with the punches outlook, I might chalk that up to a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Basically, someone who's willing to challenge themselves and think about how they're going to move forward, how they might change, versus a fixed mindset, which is, hey, I am who I am. I can't get wrapped up with all of this mumbo jumbo philosophical woo woo. Leave me alone. I think that the 4 C's are sort of impervious to that sort of thinking because they seep in anyway. Because even if you have like a really conservative fixed mindset that there's no point in change, I have no interest in adapting, it doesn't mean that you're not thinking at times about a life well lived. And again, this isn't something that we do most of the time. It's exhausting and then annoying to talk about this stuff constantly. This book club is awesome. But if we talked about this for hours on end, we'd end up talking about the Steelers or the Eagles or something super trivial because it just becomes too much. But in the moment when we think about these things, even, to Matt's question, someone with a truly, hard fixed mindset, the 4 C's still matter. They might resist thinking about kind of how they've evolved over time, and that is what it is. People show up with different personalities, different dispositions, different happiness set points, but the categories still land, and they're still going to have some residue in the way someone reflects on the life that they're living and the life that they might live in the future.
And I would imagine that people spend time in maybe one quadrant of the 4 C's rather than another. You might get somebody talking more about that kind of the competence. They might be in that lane. So they might spend just a little bit less time in some of the others and then find like where their sweet spot. And I think as an advisor, you can see like the sections where they really start to come alive and use your hands and, spend more time and tell more stories around that. So I would think like that would be something that an advisor can observe as they're going through that. We do have another question. We have 2 questions. This one from Keena Pettijohn, and I think it's a good time, Brian, to bring in this question around it. So it's a long one. So I'm going to take a breath and we're going to go for it here. Okay.
Go for it.
So wealth management has traditionally been built upon the analytics of portfolios, risk, tax, loss harvesting, financial and estate planning, and a multitude of factors that does not enlighten the client nor the advisor as to the basis of how decisions are made on behalf of the individual, nor their predisposition to making financial changes. So, how does Brian's approach play into the advisor's process and change the way they should be doing business with their clients?
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you.
Big question. Thank you for the question, Keena.
It's a big question, and it actually pretty nicely encapsulates the idea I had for Shaping Wealth about 3 or 4 years ago, because as the geometry of wealth landed in the world and translated into a bunch of languages, and I got just random beautiful notes from strangers saying that these ideas have helped them think about their lives differently, think about their relationships differently. And it's like, wow, those are like holy moly type moments. And then mapping that up to the way financial advice has been, sort of conceptualized and executed over the last generation or two. I think what we can see is that there's been a profound evolution in our industry, and one that's moved quite quickly. I mean, this was a brokerage business. If you recall the movie Wall Street, Bud Fox was a financial advisor. Blue Horseshoe loves Anacott Steel. He was putting his best clients in his best names. That was financial advice, is what it is. Fast forward to now, ours is much more of a helping profession where advisors are helping people along life's journey, and they're doing so wearing two hats. One is mechanic and one is guide. On the one hand, they are solving engineering problems, estate structure, tax minimization or optimization, portfolio optimization, highest Sharpe ratio, highest returns, the right insurance portfolio, all those kind of things. Those are skills, those are valuable, and those are mechanical skills, engineering skills that are to some extent commoditized. A lot of people do those now. So it's one thing to build a beautiful engine and have it run it smoothly. It's another to ask, is this vehicle even going in the right direction? Because you can have a well-running car that drives into a ditch if you're not asking the right question. So advisors nowadays are not only mechanics, they are guides. And so what I'm trying to do here, what I did in the book, somewhat accidentally, you don't really know what you're doing until after the fact sometimes, but now very deliberately is saying, okay, I don't have a lot to say about the mechanical piece. On the investing side, I do. I know something about that. But broadly speaking, estates and taxes and insurance, like that's not my thing. On the guidance piece, well, what should we be talking about? It's not just being a good guide, being a faithful advisor. That's just not a function of, good intention, common sense, and high ethics. There's skills involved related to a variety of complicated disciplines in the cognitive sciences, in behavioral finance, in positive psychology, in emotional intelligence. And these just aren't things that just show up willy-nilly. These are skills. These are things that you train for, just like you would go to the gym and become, more fit in a CrossFit type scenario. You can do a CrossFit type exercise on becoming a better behavioral advisor, becoming a modern advisor who becomes a stronger guide. So everything that was in the book and now in the firm that I own and run is built to capture the guidance piece and saying, hey, you got the mechanical piece. You're well skilled. You've got your CFP, your MBA, your CMA, your CFA. You're really good at a lot of that technical stuff. But as my brilliant partner, Joy Leary, says, the soft skills are the hard skills. The soft skills aren't woo-woo. To become more emotionally intelligent isn't just a flip of the coin. It's work that you have to do that a lot of advisors, frankly, don't want to do. But the ones who do it are going to deepen trust. They're going to embolden relationships. They're going to have higher referrals, more wallet share. They're going to do all the things they want to do, and not because they build the right estate plan.
And they're going to have funded contentment.
Well, so you say that almost in an offhand way. Here's the deal. Engagement with the advisor herself is critically important here, because now even today, advisors are often treated as sort of a hollow pass-through entity in between a corporate initiative and a client KPI. Well, how about treating the advisor as a human being? So we like to say that we train advisors as player coaches in the quest for funded contentment. Put funded contentment to the side. We talked about that a fair bit. Player coach. Yes, you are coaching others, but you are also trying to achieve funded contentment yourself. If we put it in the terms of the classic hero's journey, you are the hero of your own journey before you become a guide to others. You are Luke before you become Obi-Wan. You are Katniss before you become Haymitch. Okay, you are Andy before you become Nigel in The Devil Wears Prada. These are all the same movie, by the way. Most movies are the hero's journey. So you are a hero before you are a guide, and taking that seriously, pursuing your own path and passion, it's awesome. And you should be empowered to do that.
Absolutely. When you're working with an advisor, whether or not they're fueled by that passion or not.
Yeah, you could probably, you can tell.
Feel it. Yeah,
You can feel whether they are just providing a service or truly leaning into human-centric advice.
right. And leaning into the client. So yeah, so you provided a whole framework and now a whole system. And to your point about going to the gym, well, you don't stop going to the gym just because you've
Yeah.
you've gone one time. It's a perpetual theme. I do want to have, and boy, we have 4 minutes left. I just want to
That went
have a
fast.
really quick question here. Do you find the FIRE movement is really the pursuit of funded contentment? Why or why not?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. It's a good question. So the fire, I don't even know what the status of the fire movement is. I don't know if it came
Yeah.
and went, but it seemed to get at least more press or more Twitter coverage a couple or 3 years ago. So FIRE is financially independent, retire early. And it kind of reflected in sort of after a 10-year bull market, a lot of people in their 30s saying, I've got enough money, I don't want to work anymore. Now that's a crude and somewhat unfair rendition, but it's not entirely inaccurate as well. So I think the short answer is yes, the FIRE movement was implicitly trying to tap into funded contentment, like, hey, I'm going to align my money with meaning. I'm going to align my pocketbook with my purpose. And that's all fine and good. I think, and today's not a day to debate the FIRE movement, but I think one of the challenges to that move, I don't even think it's a movement. It's more of an instinct that some people have, is that they want their work to be meaningful to them. And that, if you can retire early at age 32 or 41 or whatever the number is, then you can just go kind of balance your money life in a way where you're sort of skating along for the next 30 or 50 years. But the fact is that because work is one of the 4 C's, it's competence, you have to find that passion somewhere. You become bored as hell really quickly, and then you have to question what's next. So sometimes the FIRE people who were pursuing FIRE were basically just looking for a better job.
And a few more minutes on the Kahneman and Deaton study that we did close the poll. That
Yeah.
amount was $75,000, right?
Yes, that is right.
What was your take on that? I want to kind of close with this idea of happiness, joy, and I want to read something from the book before we close.
Yeah, I'll summarize Kahneman and Deaton 2010. It's 4 pages. You can Google it. It's quick to read. It's not particularly technical. It basically makes 2 findings. The first is that it reinforces some conventional wisdom that money does not buy experienced happiness, though. So that with an income of 75 to 100 grand, basically, if you could put food on the table and have a warm house and a roof over your head and some modicum of safety, a higher level of income, 200 grand, 300 grand, 2 million a year, it doesn't make you happier in the day-to-day. There's other factors going on. The second thing they found, more controversial, less substantiated, but still very provocative, is that money's relationship to reflective happiness, to that deeper source of contentment, actually keeps going up at higher levels. And there aren't great answers in the research for why that's true, but my reflection on it is that if you spend your money wisely, which not the perfect framing, but basically you can underwrite a meaningful life, you can pursue the 4 C's with money. So true wealth in a sense is aligning your wallet or portfolio with those sources of contentment.
I love that. Brian, I have one more thing that I would like to read from the book in honor of Father's Day and
Oh,
all the work that you put into this and that you put into the geometry of wealth. Again, I encourage you, if you haven't read the book, and if you're like me and you're in the car, Audible is fantastic. But I was really moved throughout the book with, again, a lot of it touched me emotionally at different parts. And your acknowledgement, I thought it would be okay. Would it be okay if I read the last page, or you read the last page? Page 197. I was almost wanted to cry when I read that. And I thought, what a great way to end today's book club. 197, page 197. I kind of got insights into what the meaning of true wealth is for you, Brian. And I think that the audience would love to hear that.
how about you read it? I don't know if I
Okay.
could get through it.
Okay. Here I'm going to read it for you. Again, a great book. My deepest gratitude is to my wife and 3 children. Tracy is as kind and graceful as a person I've ever known. She inspires me to be a better man. that I get to spend my days with her, building a life and a family together with our wonderful children, Ben, Zach, and Sarah, is a blessing for which I am eternally grateful. The four of them have taught me the meaning of true wealth. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
What
Tina.
a fantastic book. Again, I think that these are evergreen kind of stoic philosophies that you can share, and you could definitely have better discussions around money, no matter who you're with. So I just want to thank you for enlightening our book club and certainly my own life. And I know that I speak for Kelly, Megan, Lauren, and everyone here at Intentionally. So I'm going to put a couple of hearts in the chat for you. And again, thank you for everybody who's joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. And so many people showed up, and I know a lot of these people. I love a lot of these people. This has been one of the best experiences I've had in a long time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out, and you'll all get replay. Thank you again, Brian.
You're welcome.